Hey, and welcome back to Sydney Trains Vlogs, and welcome back to another chat about the high-speed rail project that's been talked about again in Australia. Now, in the background, we're going to just have a video play on a loop from the High-Speed Rail Authority, which I've just muted just to avoid copyright and all that kind of stuff due to the music. But yeah, we'll have a bit of a chat about high-speed rail. Now, I've done a video about this before, but there wasn't a massive amount of information then, but now there is a bit more that we can go through. Now to start off with, what is high-speed rail in Australia? High-speed rail in Australia is the Australian government's plan for a future high-speed rail network that will connect Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne and regional communities across the east coast of Australia. The first phase connects Newcastle to Sydney in about 1 hour. So yeah, we'll be able to travel from Newcastle to Sydney or vice versa, which will take about an hour. And also from the Central Coast to Sydney or Central Coast to Newcastle, which will take about half an hour. Now to go through some benefits of high-speed rail. The new high-speed trains will operating speeds of up to 320 k's an hour. They'll be quick, convenient, comfortable journeys, so you can start your working day on the train instead of in the office. High levels of reliability, above 98%. Anchor stations in Newcastle, Central Coast and Sydney. A new dedicated railway line with new tunnels, infrastructure, providing a shorter and faster alignment, and intermediate station options under analysis. Now the current progress section, which was updated in the later part of last year, says the Newcastle to Sydney corridor is currently being investigated as the first phase of the East Coast high-speed rail network that will be delivered. The authority is currently preparing a business case that is expected to be presented to the Australian government by the end of 2024, so that should have been done already. This work will be supported by a product definition report, which will look at the entire high-speed rail network, including an approach to corridor preservation, broader stakeholder and community engagement, and environmental planning. Connecting Newcastle to Sydney. The first phase of the East Coast high-speed rail network will connect two of the largest cities in New South Wales, Sydney and Newcastle, via the Central Coast. Key regions and cities within the corridor have strong economic activity. Stable population growth, especially in Newcastle, is expected to continue and underpin its role as a global gateway. The population of Newcastle, Hunter Valley and Central Coast regions is expected to grow by 22% to nearly 1.2 million by the early 2040s. The Central Coast and Newcastle areas currently support more than 420,000 jobs. New homes to accommodate growth are expected in major greenfield areas and key centres such as Gosford, Tuggerah, Wyong, Lake Macquarie and Newcastle. The existing rail network between Newcastle and Sydney is the busiest in Australia. Currently, almost 15 million passengers are transported annually, along with significant volumes of freight. Passenger services are often disrupted by freight train movements. That's very true. And the network is forecast to reach full capacity by the end of the 2040s. The current Newcastle to Sydney journey time by train and car is about 2.5 hours. And road travel is often impacted by traffic accidents, with many single points of failure existing on the M1 motorway. There are 91,000 trips every weekday on the road corridor between Newcastle, Lake Macquarie and Sydney. Now, going through the generations of opportunities. So section 1 is connecting Australians. Quick, convenient, reliable and comfortable service, integrated with existing transport networks and reducing car use. Section 2 is more housing options. New opportunities for placemaking, urban renewal, planned growth, catalysing greater housing choices, more affordable housing, innovative funding and development partnerships. And the third and final section of this part is economic growth opportunities. New regional growth opportunities, including tourism, new jobs and industries, support for local manufacturing opportunities and construction sector viability, a resilient and sustainable network contributing to meeting Australia's net zero targets. Now, Sydney-Newcastle is just the first stage of this. The next stages and estimated trip times include Sydney to Canberra, which will take approximately an hour and a half, Brisbane to the Gold Coast, which will take approximately 45 minutes, Melbourne to Shepparton, which will take approximately 40 minutes, and Sydney to Melbourne and Sydney to Brisbane, which will both take approximately 4 hours. Now, something that's on my mind and possibly a lot of other people's minds is why now and why again? Because as you all know, that this has been talked about a lot, many times over the years, and it never eventuates, and that's probably why in the first video I did about this, there was a lot of comments saying things along the lines of, like, it won't happen, or we'll believe it when we see it. And yeah, definitely understand those comments. But I think that this is probably the furthest that we've come, I think, with the study and everything like that. I'm happy to be proved wrong, by the way. Anyway, okay, so this section is why now and why again. The 2013 East Coast High-Speed Rail study found high-speed rail would produce a positive economic benefit, would be technically feasible, and would have a transformational effect on how most Australians live, work and travel. Detailed work by the New South Wales Government in 2019 on the Newcastle to Sydney corridor confirmed that fast, reliable rail travel between major centres and growth areas supports housing and jobs growth. Since then, Australia has seen a population growth and changing settlement patterns on the East Coast. New ways of working as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact of changing climate. A decade of massive rail infrastructure investment across Australia worth more than $100 billion has included Sydney Metro, Cross River Rail, Melbourne Metro and Inland Rail. This has seen the creation of a construction sector skills base that did not exist in Australia previously at this scale, bringing with it world-class construction techniques and a workforce and sector looking for ongoing opportunities and certainty. Almost 70,000 kilometres of high-speed rail is in operation around the world, with a further 30,000 kilometres under construction, and more to come. So what's happening now are on-site studies like geotechnical investigations to test ground condition. Now, just another thing, there is a national high-speed rail hub that you can actually visit, and you can ask questions and they'll have a lot of information about this. And that is actually located in Newcastle itself. It's located at 175 Scott Street. It is located pretty close to the Queen's Wharf ferry wharf. And it's also located very close to the Queen's Wharf light rail stop as well. So you could do that. Or if you want to pretty much read everything I've just read out to you and just comb through the site even more, feel free to do so. You can also find the video that's playing in the background here, but with sound. There's the music in the background, that's why I had muted it, but the information that was given by the person talking is pretty much the information that's that I've said in this video. Credit to the High Speed Rail Authority for this media footage. And yeah, look, I'm a little bit skeptical. However, I like to try my best to have a positive attitude, and yeah, just sort of hope it goes ahead. I think that it's something that Australia definitely needs. I mean, hey, I love catching a VSIT or an Oscar or a Marion or something, the 2.5 hours from Sydney to Newcastle, I don't mind it. But then again, that's just me as a train spotter or just a guy that loves watching out the window at the view and things like that. But I mean, if you're a commuter every day and you have to, and I'd take my hat off to people who do need to do so, but for people that have to travel from Gosford to Newcastle or Wyong to Central or Gosford to Central or, man, even Sydney to Newcastle, vice versa, every weekday, you'd be stuffed by the end of the week. all that travel. Say you have to travel 5 hours a day. That's 25 hours a week of travel for a Monday to Friday job. You know what I mean? So I think it'll be a pretty good idea. I would I'd hope that they'd be on the Opal network and it'll be a cheap enough trip, similar to what it would cost on Opal now for a normal visa or whatever from Sydney to Newcastle. That'll be good. It'd make sense that it would be that cheap, I guess, $5, $10, $15 maybe each way, especially if commuters are travelling every single day, like workers are travelling every single day. You don't want it to be, $50 a day and next thing you have half your paycheck down the drain by the time you get home from work. But by the time you get by the end of the week, you know what I mean. But yeah, anyway, positive thoughts about that. Let me know what you think, if you think it's a good idea or not, or if you think it's absolutely terrible, or if you think it's not going to happen at all. But anyway, that's all. Thank you for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. And check out that link in the description. It'll take you straight to the High Speed Rail Authority's website, where you can also, again, find that address for the National High Speed Rail Hub that's in Newcastle. If you want to or are able to, whatever, go and check that out. Ciao.